northeastern and eastern Tibet, areas which sit in close proximity to China. And I have based my the reasons why Tibetans continue to set themselves on fire. My reasons are based on the statements made by four prominent Tibetans in Tibet, who were in fact the pillars of the Chinese Communist establishment. One is the late 10th Panchen Lama, the Lama who stayed back in Tibet. And in 1962, he submitted a petition to the top Chinese leadership, including Mao Zedong. And in this, he drafted the petition after he toured all over Tibet. And he found the conditions throughout Tibet really sad and tragic. And this was the reason which provoked him into writing this petition, which I feel is a very brave act on his part. Earlier on, there was only one Chinese leader who was brave enough, courageous enough to tell Mao Zedong the conditions, the policies which he pursued led to disaster. And this, he was China's defense minister. His name is Peng Dehuai, and he was the only Chinese who told Mao Zedong to his face that his hardline policies were producing famine, the biggest starvation in China, and this famine resulted in the death of at least 30 million Chinese peasants. So apart from Peng Dehuai, Panchen Lama was the only other leader who had the conscience and the courage to tell Mao Zedong that his Tibet policies were doing huge damage to the Tibetan people. So, and in fact, the petition which he submitted to Mao Zedong was described by Jasper Becker, the author of Hungry Ghost, China's Secret Famine famine, as being on the verge of telling Mao Zedong that his attempted genocide of the Tibetan people was a huge failure. So Mao Zedong called the petition a poisoned arrow aimed at the party by our class enemy. So for his pains, the Panchen Lama was subjected to class struggle. He was confined to solitary confinement for many years. After the passing away of Mao Zedong in 1976, and when Deng Xiaoping 2 years later assumed full authority in China, he reversed many of Mao's hardline policies, and he, in fact, encouraged China to open up to the rest of the world, and he produced much more liberal political and economic reforms in China. As a result of this, the Panchen Lama was released. So in 1989, the year when he died, the Panchen Lama in effect said China's policy, that Tibet had lost more than it gained under Chinese communist rule. And 2 years later, he passed away in his monastery of Tashilombu in Shigaze. The other Lama to give an honest critique of China's policies in Tibet is Ake Rinpoche. He is not Tibetan, he's Mongolian, but was recognized as a reincarnation of a very important Lama at Kumbu Monastery. He escaped Tibet in 1998 or 9, and one reason why he escaped was that the Chinese were on the verge of appointing him as a tutor to the Panchen Lama recognized by the Chinese government. So to avoid this, he escaped to the United States, and while in United States, he authored a book called The Hungry Dragon. And in this book, this book is a memoir, his autobiography. And in this book, he likened the fate of Tibet as the fate of Tibet, Taiwan, and Hong Kong as a tale of three fish. He says Taiwan is still swimming in the ocean. No one has caught that fish, at least not yet. Hong Kong is alive, but in display in the Chinese aquarium. Tibet, the third fish, is broiled and on the table, already half devoured. Its language, its religion, its culture, and its native people are disappearing faster than its glacial ice. And the judgment made by Ake Rinpoche on China's Tibet policy is important, because he was an important figure in China's in the communist establishment. He was a vice president of the Chinese Buddhist Association and a very important Lama in Kumbu Monastery. And as I've said, when he got a hint that the Chinese were trying to make him the tutor to their Panchen Lama, which was in a way trying to force him to endorse their Panchen Lama, he escaped, and now he lives in the United States. The other person to make a judgment of Chinese rule, but in a very diplomatic way, is the one by Ngabu Ngawan Chingmi. Ngabu Ngawan Chingmi was the principal representative to the series of meetings in 1951, which compelled the Tibetans to sign the 17-point agreement. This was the document forced by the Chinese on the Tibetans to legitimize their occupation of Tibet. So after the agreement was signed, he, like the 10th Panchen Lama, stayed back in Tibet. So he was, in a way, the one Tibetan who somehow, in the eyes of the Chinese, legitimized their rule of Tibet. And so his judgment, I mean, these days, whenever anyone self-immolates, their dearest wish is that they want the Dalai Lama back in Tibet, that they want freedom. So Ngabu Jingmi's contention is that here he says that dearest wish of all old Tibetans is to see the Dalai Lama before their death. But this, I feel, in a way, is a diplomatic way to say all Tibetans want to see him. So this is his judgment of the Tibetan people's regard for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he passed away several years ago at the age of 95. And in 1985, I had the privilege of being included in the fact-finding mission sent to Tibet, and this is evidence of my journey to China. And this is an image of Baba Prince Orongkir. He passed away a week back. His importance was that he founded the Tibetan Communist Party. His first wish was that in his youth that the Tibetan government, Tibet should reform, be alert to the dangers sweeping China, and his instinct was that in the Chinese Civil War between the nationalist Chinese and the communists would win, and their next target would be Tibet. So in the 1930s, he journeyed to Lhasa to warn the Tibetan government that unless you wake up, the Chinese Civil War, the potential victor of the Chinese Civil War would be the Chinese communists, and their next target would be Tibet. But unfortunately, Lhasa continued to sleep, and in desperation, he founded the Tibetan Communist Party, which later on merged with the Chinese Communist Party. And he was the one who led the People's Liberation Army into Lhasa in 1951. Later on, when there were numerous meetings between Mao Zedong, Dou Enlai, Liu Shaoqi, and all the top Chinese leaders, he was the one who served as interpreter. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama has huge regard for Baba Prince Orongkir. So his judgment is the one which you see on the screen. And when several years ago, during the time of Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin, he wrote several letters to these top Chinese leaders saying that the Dalai Lama is key to resolve the issue of Tibet, that if you ignore the Dalai Lama, if you continue to think that the central government in China can resolve the issue without any reference to the Dalai Lama, would be a huge mistake. So this is his judgment, and as I've said, in 1985 I had the privilege of being included in the delegation. The 10th Panchen Lama is in the center, flanked by Baba Prince Orongkir, and the head of our delegation, Gong Kundeling. So, what is the Tibetan judgment of China's rule in Tibet? So, this is the judgment made by Tibetans who work within the Chinese establishment. So, they say from 1950 to 1960, we lost our country. From 1960 to 1970, we lost our political power, which meant that His Holiness the Dalai Lama fled to India. The government of Tibet was dissolved, was replaced by the government of the so-called Tibet Autonomous Region. From 1970 to 1980, we lost our culture because of the huge suppression of the activities of the various monasteries. And from 1980 to 1990, we lost our economy because of the increasing number of Chinese settlers who take up Tibetan jobs. So this is the judgment of Tibetans who work within the Chinese establishment on the Chinese rule in Tibet. So these are the 6 features of Chinese rule in Tibet which have compelled, till now 130 Tibetans to self-immolate. Its constant assault on Tibet's Buddhist civilization, language and identity, interference in Tibetan spiritual life. The Chinese government has arrogated to itself the right to appoint Tibetan spiritual leaders. So for half of the time of their rule in Tibet, they did their best to destroy Tibetan Buddhism. Now they are trying to monopolize in appointing spiritual leaders of the Tibetan people. And one thing which hurts Tibetans the most is the constant demonization of His Holiness and forcing monks to denounce the Dalai Lama. The relation between a teacher and a student is a relationship which we inherited from India. So according to Tibetan Buddhism, your teacher, your guru, is the one which guides you to a better state of mind, to enlightenment, to achieve an enlightened mind. So he is the most important person in your life, and you put your complete trust in your teacher. So for any student or a disciple to denounce his guide is something unthinkable. So because of this, rather than so these are the conditions which have forced these 130 Tibetans to self-immolate. And the other is the influx of Chinese settlers into Tibet. I think all the urban areas in Tibet are dominated by Chinese. So which means that the whole landscape of the urban centers are being Sinicized. So Tibetans feel that they are not living in their own old familiar cultural environment. And then there's the forcing nomads to settle in permanent structures. For this old Tibet, we had half of Tibet was nomads, the other half farmers. So the nomadic way of life somehow defined the Tibetan character and our sense of who we are. So forcing the nomads to stay in permanent structures somehow sort of damages our identity, our sense of self-worth. And then, of course, there's the exploitation of Tibet's natural resources, which is another reason why China would stay put in Tibet. I was told there are 130 minerals in Tibet, and some of the minerals are of significant, economic value. So this in the early 60s, when there was stronger emphasis on political campaigns in Tibet, Tibetans in Tibet were taught that there cannot be two suns in the same sky. You cannot pretend to, like communism, but continue to engage in Buddhist practices. So, by self-immolating, I think, and saying that they want the Dalai Lama back in Tibet, Tibetans agree that there is only one sun in the sky, and that sun is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So the question is, is this capacity and willingness to destroy another people's culture innate in the Chinese, in the character of the Chinese people? And my answer to this, Tibetans were self-immolating. So information, unfettered information is shut in China. But there are also Chinese who managed to climb over the Great Firewall and peep into what's happening within the country. So those who know about self-immolation, their attitude are the following. And this is Ai Weiwei, who's well respected in outside China, and his is that when people are burning themselves to death, and this was several years ago, already over 40 of them in the past 2 years, and nobody's talking about it. I think to respect the Tibetans is not to touch them, to leave them alone, which is completely opposite of what the Chinese government is doing. The Chinese government's policy towards Tibetans is very intrusive, interfering in people's spiritual life. And this is Ran Yunfei. He lives in Sichuan province, and his contention is that if the reason why Tibetans are self-immolating is because the Chinese authorities' attitude towards religion. And here is Xu Diyong. He, right now, he's in prison, recently put in prison. But in 2009 and before, he was outside prison walls, alive and very active. And he founded an NGO called Gongming. Gongming means the Open Constitution Initiative. The responsibility which Gongming took on itself is to protect or to defend people who are wrongly trained by the Chinese authorities. So when the 2008 Tibet-wide protests took place, the immediate reaction of the Chinese government was that these protests were instigated, manipulated, masterminded by the Dalai Lama and his clique. So Gongming wanted to find out whether this was true. So they sent 3 researchers to the 3 traditional provinces of Tibet, Kham, Amdo, and Central Tibet. So their finding, the 3 researchers' finding, was made public by Gongming in May 2009. And they found that the causes of the Tibetan people's unhappiness was came not from outside Tibet, but emerged from within Tibet because of China's wrong policies. And Gongming, in their recommendations, their first recommendation was that in future, any policy developed by the Chinese government must be based on the aspirations of the Tibetan people. So this organization was closed. The reason was that whenever in China, if any NGO receives foreign funding, a percentage of this funding must be given to the Chinese government. So Gongming was accused of not giving a part of their funding to the Chinese government, and the organization was closed. But I think lately he was imprisoned for gathering a crowd to disturb public order. And then we have Liu Xiaobao, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2010. And after the 2008 protests in Tibet, he, along with others, signed a petition to the Chinese government, requesting the Chinese government to engage His Holiness the Dalai Lama in talks and to stop the inflammatory propaganda which provoked hostility, ethnic tension between Chinese and Tibetans. And, excuse me, if you are interested, you can see their report. If you Google search and type Gongming Tibet report, you'll have their entire report. And same here. If you Google search and type 12 suggestions for dealing with the Tibetan situation, you'll have the entire report of what these Chinese scholars signed. And there's many Chinese believe that if there is a free and unfettered interaction between the Dalai Lama and Chinese students, scholars, there would be much more sympathy for the issue of Tibet. And in 1910, there's a Chinese scholar called Wang Lishong. He organized a Twitter conversation between the Dalai Lama and young Chinese in China. And as you see, there's 12,771 Chinese engaged in this conversation, and they were asked to select the 10 best questions to be given to His Holiness. So, and these 10 best questions were answered by His Holiness, and so Yu these are his comments. So Yu escaped from China. He's Chinese Christian. So he told Radio Free Asia that if the interaction between His Holiness and Chinese scholars, students, continue, then the Chinese people will see the true nature of the Dalai Lama. Right now, in Chinese propaganda, he is denounced as a monk in wolf's clothes, as a splitters, as a demon, as someone who is really bent on painting China in the blackest light. So, in these 10 questions, and these questions were, these questions are questions which we have. Will, this after His Holiness's absence, will Tibetans still do violence? Who will select what will happen to the 15th Dalai Lama? Who will decide to select him? So, many of the concerns expressed by these Chinese participants are concerns which we also share. So, Yu's judgment is that if there is no information blackout, the Chinese people will realize that the Tibetan struggle is not anti-China, not anti-Chinese people, that they are struggling for their rights. And this will make them much more sympathetic to the concerns of the Tibetan people. So this is the end of my talk, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Who studies this issue, and she has noticed, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it seems as if all the self-immulators, when they are not monks, that they come from the Gelug tradition. Is that true? And if it is true, then how come that is so statistically kind of current. That is a statistic tendency.
This I really don't know,
No?
to be honest.
No?
And the thought never occurred to us.
No.
But whether they Giluk or any other, whether they belong to any other religious denomination, the reasons why they self-immolate are the reasons which I try to just explain. So we certainly feel that if the Chinese government develops resolve the issue, we are not seeking separation from China. What we are saying is that we would like to live within the constitutional framework of the People's Republic of China if the events are given the rights which are enshrined in their constitution. So the basic demand of the Tibetan people is that they want the Dalai Lama back. And if the Chinese government is, if they are confident that they have the devotion of the Tibetan people, if they have won over their hearts and minds, they can easily fulfill this demand. And in fact, the Dalai Lama, in my judgment, is the most effective partner in this common search for a settlement on the issue of Tibet.
Would you please talk a little bit about the Chinese government's reaction to the self-immolations? What have they done? Please.
I think their immediate, this reaction is to increase the number of fire extinguishers in Tibet. Instead of solving the issue, they try to, sort of put the flames by, increasing the number of fire extinguishers, and also they have increased surveillance. If you go to Lhasa, there are cameras in every street corner, and they have also increased the put in place a stricter monastic management control. Overall, I think the Chinese government's thinking is that this economic development will wean the Tibetans away from their loyalty to the Dalai Lama, their devotion to Tibetan Buddhism. But we feel that what makes us Tibetan is Tibetan Buddhism, and the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, sits on top of it. And there's so this kind of trying to buy the Tibetan people's loyalty was not work. So if they are much more tolerant of this towards Tibetan Buddhism, if they promote this Tibetan language, allow Tibetans to freely practice. They say they allow Tibetans to freely practice, but our critique is that this Buddhist transmission from teacher to student to students to their student, it's not at all it's being broken. That's why the Karmapa, one reason he said he fled to India was that there was no qualified teachers for him to be taught Buddhism.
Can I just improved economic conditions will wean the Tibetans away from His Holiness and Buddhism? How does that fit with the practice of moving the nomads off the land where they could supply their own food and be happy in their lives. And I'm not sure if they're moving the farmers off the land. I assume it's not just the nomads, but that they're also moving the farmers off the land. The nomads are going from being independent to being beggars. So how does China say that, their lives have improved economically when in fact it's just the opposite?
China, I think, gives two reasons for their nomad resettlement. One is that there is increasing desertification in Tibet, and this is because of overgrazing by yaks and other cattle. So the nomads should reduce their cattle or herd stock. The other is so they want the sort of land vacated by the nomads for the grass to rejuvenate. Now we really don't know whether this makes this environmental sense. For this thousands of years, the nomads roamed the grasslands of Tibet without any danger of the grasslands turning into desert. But the more fundamental reason I feel is that if the nomads are living in permanent structures, this would increase China's ability to control them. China has always been an urban civilization, and they know how to impose control on urban centers. When nomads, just move from one place to another, it's very difficult for the Chinese authorities to, exercise any degree of control. That could be a reason, I feel. Please. On this question, from the Chinese side, they say they are the ones who will choose the 15th, the next Dalai Lama. As far as His Holiness, the Dalai Lama's position is concerned, he said he will decide when he is around 90 who the next Dalai Lama will be, or whether previously he was thinking of so many options on how to select the next Dalai Lama. He has told the press several times that the next Dalai Lama could be selected like the Pope among all the important lamas. Or we have a Tibetan concept called Mandet Tugu. You can when you alive, you can say, this is another boy, a young boy, is my reincarnation. So he said he will decide when he's 90 years old, and my feeling and conviction is that the Tibetan people and non-Tibetans who are within the Tibetan Buddhist fold will respect whatever the 14th Dalai Lama decides. And in this, I feel the Chinese Communist Party's voice will be a very tiny voice. I think physically, its example is the case of Lhasa. I was born in Lhasa, which at that time I felt it was the biggest city in the world. But coming to India, it doesn't compare even to this Dharamsala, old Lhasa. But now it's beyond recognition, and the architecture, the symbols have been totally synthesized. So Lhasa has become another Chinatown, and Tibetans, old Tibetans who live in Lhasa, they don't sort of feel comfortable. They don't feel that this is their city. It's been taken over by Chinese, businessmen, the settlers. So physically, it's I think in Tibet has been transformed fundamentally. But on the other hand, there is the mental, and psychological makeup of the Tibetan people. We have a worldview with, core values. That, I think, is still intact. And one hopeful trend is the degree to which young Chinese, young, well-to-do Chinese are attracted to Tibetan cultural values. And one of the fundamental Tibetan cultural values is Tibetan Buddhism. There is the case of the Larun Kar Institute, founded by Khenpo Jigme Phunzo in 1980 as a hermitage, as a place for you to meditate and to retreat. So this has grown to over 10,000 students. And out of this, more than 1,000 students are Chinese from the mainland. So there is, increasing number of Chinese who invite Tibetan lamas to their homes in, in the coastal areas, and also Chinese, students, men and women who, practice, study, and become Tibetan Buddhists. So this cultural attraction, I feel, not only indicates the strength and depth of Tibetan culture, but its attraction to Chinese, which reconfirms the unbreakable spirit of the Tibetan people.
Do we know at this point what is the ratio that the Tibetans are outnumbered by the Han Chinese?
This is old data. I think we say there's 7.5 million Chinese on the Tibetan plateau against 6 million Tibetans.
Well, that's increasing.
That's increasing, especially with this railway line. More Chinese coming in, and huge percentage not returning.
So if we look at the small possibility that there may be settlers, Chinese settlers there, surely that would have removed so much of the Tibetan identity that Tibet could never be a place that any Tibetan in exile, once returned there, can look upon this and say, this is an identity that I feel a part of. It would be so devastating. Will there be anything left for him to recognize?
Advantage in a this civilized way. To exercise any kind of autonomy, you would need to have the majority of the people who enjoy that autonomy be comfortable with the situation. And if in any area, if Tibetans are outvoted by the Chinese, then we would need to create solutions which makes to ensure that this does not happen.
That's a tremendous job on hand.
So in the 60s, Thich Nhat Hanh described the self-immolation of a Vietnamese Buddhist monk in the purpose of the Vietnam War as an act of construction rather than an act of destruction. Do you think that Tibetans tend to view self-immolation in a similar way as an act of construction, just from your own experience?
I think Tibetans resorting to this self-immolation is in a way an indication of their deference for the this non-violent teachings of His Holiness. You own your own body, and I can do what I want with my, this body. But you are not harming any other, someone outside of you. So I think it's to my mind, it's an indication that they know that His Holiness the Dalai Lama wants the issue of Tibet to be solved non-violently. And faced with such a stubborn opposition in the form of the Chinese government, they feel that they have no other resort except to use their body to highlight the issue of Tibet to the international community.